and today we're going to be diving into Dehancer and comparing it to the film look creator. Full disclosure, Dehancer did provide their software for free, but they did not get any look at this video early and are not compensating me for my coverage. But if you use code VAUGHN10 at checkout for 10% off when you purchase the Dehancer license, I do get a commission from that, so if I or anyone else convinces you that Dehancer is right for you, feel free to toss that in. Now, for me, the biggest question with Dehancer is, how does it compare to the film look creator built right into Resolve? When it was added in 2024, it changed the way I grade, since it's a great way to get a finished look pretty quickly. It's decently customizable to get the look you want. Even if you don't want a film look per se, you can still get pleasing colors and keep it clean. Now, after using Dehancer for a few months, I found that you can get an even more tangible feeling film emulation, provided you put in the time to adjust the look to your taste. So, let's dive into the way that I use Dehancer. I'm going to demonstrate on a few clips shot in different lighting conditions to show its versatility. First, here's a clip I shot of my friend sitting on a beach. Don't worry, the cigarette is fake. Now, here's how I handle color management. There are several ways to do this, and I've linked some great resources from the official Dehancer site in the description. Okay, let's jump in. So first, I like to make sure that my timeline color space is in DaVinci Wide Gamut and that the output color space is Rec 709, since that's just pretty standard. Then now, here on the footage, I toss on a color space transform, and I set the input to whatever color space they was shot in. In this case, it was on my FX30 and S-Log3, and then I set the output to DaVinci Wide Gamut and Intermediate. Then I take another color space transform, and then I toss that on, put it from DaVinci Wide Gamut and Intermediate. Whoop, there we go. Into Rec 709. Okay, and now in the middle, we are going to toss in Dehancer. And now that we have Dehancer on there, I'm just going to set this to DaVinci Wide Gamut as well, and Intermediate, and now we are off to the races. Now that we've set up our project, it's time to get to work. I find that the default Kodak 250D often needs the least work to get to a finished look, so for this video, we're going to keep it here. Then, as I'm working, I like to turn off the film grain for playback since it can slow down my computer. We're going to come back to that later. So normally I start with the film developer and then I increase the color boost slightly just to bring some life back into the colors. Often like 35 or so, just to bring a bit of saturation. There you go. Then film compression adjusts the clipping points of the image to better mimic the highlight roll-off of film. So I usually turn this on. And then particularly at the bright highlights back here, you see how it kind of brings those back while not making it feel flat. Now I also do a lot of work with Expand. By adjusting the black point and the white point of the image, you can get a level of contrast you're happy with. In this case, I'm going to bring this up just to bring down the shadows a little and just take down the highlights just a hair, just so that we kind of get a bit of a brighter kind of look. And I'm pretty happy with this. Now with print, this emulates the way that a film is printed onto other film reels for distribution, so it can introduce other characteristics into the image. You can see that if we do a Fuji or a Kodak here, it's going to change the contrast and just change the color overall, but I usually just leave this on linear since I want to stay true to the original film stock. Now the film grain looks great in Dehancer, and something that I've found is that even if you have it set down to 0, there is still a noticeable amount of grain in your image, so often I'll actually keep it at 0 just so that it'll have a little bit of texture there but have it not be too distracting. And I think for this image we were at a 1.2 and we had a pretty heavy ND, so I'm going to set this down to ISO 50 just to mimic how it might have been shot there. Take that back down to 0, and I'm pretty happy with this. And then halation, even if you don't have a lot of super bright highlights, still adds some nice warmth into the image. Look at how the blue of the sky is going to change a little, and just adds just a bit of warmth that just is really nice. Now bloom adds a little bit of fall off as the image transitions from bright to dark areas. See, if we zoom in on the edges of the shirt here and then we turn it on, we're going to see just a bit of wrap there that just, it's just nice. So I'm going to leave that on. Film damage adds artifacts that might naturally occur if dust or hair finds its way onto the film or the film reel has been ran a lot. If you see a movie projected on film, you'll see these artifacts and they can increase the more times the reel is run. Like when I saw Oppenheimer pretty late into its 70mm IMAX run, I saw a lot more of these artifacts versus when I first watched it closer to its opening day. I honestly just find them distracting and normally just leave this off. Now film breath and gate weave add other imperfections that naturally occur if you're shooting on film, but I usually leave these off unless I'm trying to draw attention to these imperfections. Then overscan emulates a scan of the full film reel, but I rarely use this since I find it kind of distracting and generally just not meant to be seen. And also will crop in on your image, and I find, unless you're trying to use it for a particular style, I just leave it off. Now the vignette is useful to draw the viewer's eye towards the center and away from the edges of the frame. I think we had a natural vignette from the lens in this shot anyway. I think we're at a f1.2, but I still turn this on just since I like the effect that it gives. Maybe turn up the exposure just a hair, just because the face up there you're seeing is getting a little bit darkened. Now, the monitoring tools can be very useful if you want to precisely gauge exposure and see where your image clips to white or to black. For example, of course, here we have our false color, and then if we turn on clipping, we can see which areas of the shot just have no more detail because they're too dark. Now, the output here just adjusts the overall mix of the effects of Dehancer, but I usually just leave this at 100. Now, if you opt to generate a light, you're not going to get any of the temporal qualities of Dehancer, like the grain or the film breath or any of those effects, but it will still transform the colors of your image, which can be helpful on set if you do some work in pre-production and already know the look that you're going for. Now here's the same shot as I graded it a few months ago in the Film Look Creator, and you can see as we switch between them the differences in the quality of the image. Of course, you can tweak either tool to better match the other, but Dehancer provides a subtle tactility that I find can't be matched with the Film Look Creator. Now here are a few other clips I've graded with Dehancer compared to how I first graded them with the Film Look Creator. For this night interior, I was going for a high contrast monochrome look, so I used CineStill 800T and adjusted the aforementioned tools to taste. Now this is the original grade in the Film Look Creator compared to now. And the Look Creator looks very good, but Dehancer just has certain qualities that I haven't been able to match. This particular short was about a very high-stakes game of Uno, and it was directed by my friend here. And this is the day exterior in which I wasn't going for a filmic look, but more of a clean digital one. I used the stock Portra 160 and added some bloom, a vignette, and film compression. Even though we're not going for a filmic look per se, these qualities of film can still help your image look better. You can also see here that I had it print out to Kodak 2383, since for this sequence it got me to the look I was going for. Turn that off and on. Now here's the shot as I had first graded it last summer in the Film Look Creator with the vintage setting. I find that Dehancer looks truer to life here, whereas the Film Look Creator looks more stylized. This is down to a matter of taste, and again, there are lots of tools to help you better match these two plugins. Now, I hope I've given you a decent sense of the capabilities of Dehancer and how it compares to the tools built into Resolve. I am not a professional colorist, and color grading can be very subjective, but as I study and better understand cinematography, tools like Dehancer will help me elevate my footage. Now, if you do purchase a license for Dehancer, be sure to use code VAUGHN10 at checkout for 10% off your purchase. Alright, I hope you have a good one, and remember, your art is beautiful. Alright.